So one of the things we talk about time and time again here on the channel is just how impressive this Alabama staff has been on the recruiting trail. I mean, this is a staff that hasn't even been assembled for a full year. And in the case of a Coach Cap, he was a late addition to this staff and he's assembled the nation's most elite offensive line class. Today, we need to ask the question and answer it. What happens when this staff turns their attention to the class of 2026 and why? That should scare every college football fan in the nation. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe that this Alabama staff is going to be able to carry over the momentum they've gained in 2025 over to 2026? Can't wait to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. As I do constant college football content, you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into it. And today, we're going to talk about two players that will be visiting Alabama very soon in the class of 2026 that should put every college football fan out there on high alert. And that's two 5-stars in the class of 2026. And the reason why it should put them on high alert, the reason why it should put every college football fan that's not a Crimson Tide fan on notice is because of what this staff has done in 2025. This is something that I continue to talk about. This staff has proved time and time again that it's not the length of the relationship that matters the most, it's the quality of the relationship. But I have a question for all of you. What happens when you're able to marry those two concepts? What happens when you're able to not only have an outstanding quality of relationship, but when you're able to compete with every other coaching staff out there in terms of the length of the relationship? That is a scary proposition for every other fan base out there because they see what Kalen DeBoer and company are doing. If we see it, they see it. They know what's happening. They know how good this staff has been on the recruiting trail, going toe-to-toe with staffs that may far exceed the length of the relationship with players. We talk about this all the time with Dejoun Lee. Yes, Kalen DeBoer was involved. Yes, Courtney Morgan was involved. But there was a time whenever many people out there thought he would be USC bound. Now, there was never any predictions inserted, but there were articles last year from around this time that stated, hey, USC is doing a phenomenal job, and Coach Williams is a big reason as to why. Let's remember that Dejoun Lee came down to two schools, Alabama and Georgia. And important to note that Coach Williams, the guy that everybody in the recruiting industry was saying was doing such a good job recruiting Dejoun Lee for USC, he's now with Georgia. So while Lee may have had a relationship with Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan, he had to develop one with Mo Linguist because he had one with Coach Williams. So it's not just Kalen DeBoer that's been very impressive on the trail. There's a reason I gave you Coach Cap in the intro. He has been hyper impressive. Of course, Kalen DeBoer has. Of course, Courtney Morgan. Don't get me wrong. That guy right there is probably the most intriguing figure in all of college football right now. And I continue to say this. It's not going to be long before every school out there is looking for their own Courtney Morgan based off of what he's doing right now. It's infectious and people are noticing. But what happens when the staff can now mirror and marry those two concepts? The quality of relationship and the length of relationship. Well, that's something they're hoping to get kicked off this weekend. And today we need to break down two prospects that should excite all Alabama fans. First and foremost, we're going to talk about an offensive lineman. See how I led that in? Talking about Coach Cap in the intro, kicking it off with an offensive lineman in the class of 2026. And that's Jackson Cantwell, who confirmed on Twitter that he will be visiting Alabama here very soon. He stands 6'8", 300 pounds, class of 2026, and is the number 3 overall player in the nation, regardless of position, the number 1 offensive tackle, and the number 1 player in the state of Missouri. And this guy is one of those prospects that once you can try and get on his radar, you need to do everything you can to land him. He is a difference-making prospect. And if Coach Cap can follow up the recruiting he's done in 2025 with a win for a Jackson Cantwell in 2026, it's going to scare every college football fan out there. And I'm going to tell you something that already should scare college football fans out there, and that's the way that this 2025 recruiting class for Alabama is recruiting other players, recruiting their peers. I talk about this all the time. There's a reason why your tutors in college aren't professors most of the time, they're your peers, because it's easier to digest that information coming from someone who is a peer as opposed to being a professor. It's the difference between being talked at and being talked to. Now, I'm not saying that this Alabama staff is talking at players, but I think you can piece together what I'm saying. The staff already does an incredible job, and quite frankly, I haven't seen a recruiting class like the class of 2025 for Alabama where they are so intent on recruiting their peers. We see it time and time again. Duke Johnson, Jackson Lloyd, Mal Waldrop, Luke Metz, Dejon Lee. I mean, we can go on and on. It's not just one player. It's everybody. The fact that Key Russ was used to recruit Faison Brandon. That's incredible. A 5-star quarterback in the class of 2025, recruiting a 5-star quarterback in the class of 2026. That's just not something you see happen very often. So to be able to get these guys on campus when already you're having so many of your 2025 guys on campus, not only is the coaching staff going to be selling, "This is why you should come to Bama," but these other recruits are going to be selling, "This is why you should come to Bama." And it's been very successful thus far. Coach Cap has been successful, and I'm really intrigued to see how this visit turns out. But so too am I intrigued to see how the visit for Blaine Bradford goes. The number 16 player in the nation, regardless of position, the number 1 safety, and a top player in the state of Louisiana. And we already know the state of Louisiana is always loaded with talent. And one of the reasons why I'm so interested in this position in particular is because of Colin Hitchler. This was a guy at Wisconsin that was being tabbed as a recruiting guru. I mean, he was a guy that was responsible for so many of their members of that 2024 class. Then he comes to Alabama. He was a top 15 recruiter in the nation per 24/7 Sports. Now he is at Alabama. He has far greater resources, all due respect to Wisconsin. He has a far bigger brand, all due respect to Wisconsin, but it's true. And he's in the SEC. And we've seen that's a deciding factor for a lot of these players. They want to play in the SEC. So being able to get a safety of this caliber, a 5-star prospect on campus early, start cultivating that relationship, start building that relationship. And by the time signing day for these guys come around, not only is the quality of your relationship exceptional, but the length of the relationship can compete with every other coaching staff out there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is something that needs to scare every college football fan out there. If you just take a second and take note of what this staff is doing in 2025, what happens when they get a year to build the relationship with these kids? What happens when they get 2 years to build a relationship with these kids? That is something I and so many others can't wait to see. Now, as I said earlier in this video, we will be talking more about the visitors that Alabama will be hosting here very soon, but this was a video just previewing these 2 names right here and why there's something happening in Tuscaloosa that all college football fans need to be aware of. That's it. See ya.